My name is Lily Morrison, and I'm standing in the back of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Greenwich, Connecticut, for the second time in 3 years. The first time was for my mother's funeral, uninvited. This time it's for my father's, and I still wasn't invited. Daniel's call came at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. Dad's gone. Heart attack at his desk. Funeral's Friday. I should have felt something. Grief, relief, anger. Instead, I felt the same numbness that had settled over me 8 years ago when my father looked me in the eye and said, "Don't expect a dime from me." 8 years of silence. No birthday calls. No Christmas cards. Nothing, but then Daniel said something that made my hands go cold. "Lily, there's something strange in his will. The lawyer says you need to be there for the reading." Dad left specific instructions. That's when I knew. My father's final game was just beginning. I was the only black daughter in Greenwich, and that fact defined my entire childhood in ways I didn't understand until much later. My parents adopted me when I was 6 months old. My mother, Grace, was white and had grown up in Greenwich society. My father, Richard Morrison, was a black man who'd clawed his way out of Newark's Central Ward projects and built Morrison Associates into one of Wall Street's most respected investment firms. Dad never let me forget what he'd overcome to get there. While other kids got bedtime stories about princesses and dragons, I got lectures about compound interest and the importance of financial literacy in the black community. By age 10, I could explain the difference between stocks and bonds. By 12, I understood why Dad kept 3 different suits in his office, each one carefully chosen to make white clients comfortable. My brother Daniel was 3 years older and Dad's biological son from his first marriage. Where I was adopted, Daniel was blood. Where I asked questions, Daniel followed orders. Where I dreamed in colors and shapes, Daniel spoke in numbers and profit margins. Daniel did everything right. Captain of the debate team at Brunswick School. Yale undergraduate, then Yale School of Management. Summer internships at Goldman Sachs that turned into job offers he turned down to join Dad's firm. By the time I was in high school, Dad had already decided Daniel would take over Morrison Associates one day. I thought I was supposed to fit into that plan somehow. Maybe as Daniel's CFO, or head of investor relations. Dad enrolled me in advanced placement economics. He hired tutors to prep me for the SATs. He even arranged for me to shadow him at the office during school breaks, watching him negotiate deals with men who barely looked at me when they shook my hand. But something happened when I was 16. My art teacher, Ms. Chen, entered one of my paintings in a statewide competition. It was a portrait of my father, split down the middle. On one side, he wore his Wall Street suit, his expression sharp and guarded. On the other side, he wore the clothes from his old neighborhood, his face younger and full of dreams not yet compromised. I won first place. The painting hung in the Hartford Art Center for 3 months. Dad never went to see it. That should have told me everything I needed to know, but I was young and still believed I could be both things at once, the daughter he wanted and the artist I was becoming. The breaking point came during dinner at our house on Round Hill Road. I was 24, fresh out of NYU with a degree in finance that felt like wearing someone else's skin. Daniel was already working at Morrison Associates, already being groomed. Mom had been sick for 6 months, though we didn't know yet that the cancer would take her within 2 years. I'd spent the previous 3 months applying secretly to MFA programs. The acceptance letter from Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland had arrived that morning. Full scholarship. A chance to finally breathe. I got into art school, I said over Dad's famous bourbon-braised short ribs. In Portland. I'm going to defer the job offer from the firm. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the antique clock ticking in the hallway. Daniel recovered first. That's great, Lily. Portland's supposed to be amazing for artists, but Dad's face had gone completely still. He set down his fork with careful precision. No, Richard, Mom started, but he cut her off with a look. That I didn't raise you to throw away opportunities one never had, he said, his voice low and cold. Do you know what I gave up to build this life? What I sacrificed so you could have choices I never got? This is my choice, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Art is what I'm good at. It's what makes me feel. Art doesn't build generational wealth. Art doesn't prove anything to people who think we don't belong in rooms like this. He gestured around our dining room with its crystal chandelier and original Hudson River School paintings. You want to paint? Fine. Do it on weekends. But you will work at Morrison Associates, and you will help your brother build on what I created. Maybe I don't want to spend my life proving something to people who'll never accept us anyway, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. You're making the same mistakes that keep our people stuck. You think being authentic pays the bills? You think white people respect artists who look like us? They'll call you talented and exotic and never give you a real opportunity. But they have to respect money. They have to respect power. I respect my own voice more than their approval. I shot back. That's when he said the words that ended everything. Then don't expect a dime from me. You want to throw away your future? Do it on your own. He walked out of the dining room. Mom followed him, crying. Daniel just stared at his plate. I left for Portland 2 months later with $3,000 in savings and everything I owned in the back of a 15-year-old Honda Civic. Dad didn't say goodbye. He didn't answer my calls. When I tried to visit during Christmas break, he told Mom to tell me he was too busy. 8 years of complete silence. I built a life in Portland anyway. Started as a teaching assistant at PNCA, then began taking commissions for murals around the city. My work focused on identity and belonging, on the ways Black folks navigate white spaces, on the masks we wear and the cost of taking them off. The Portland art community embraced me. I started teaching free workshops for kids in North and Northeast Portland, the neighborhoods being pushed out by gentrification. The money was tight. Some months I chose between paying full rent or buying art supplies. But I was doing work that mattered, work that was mine. When Mom got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 years ago, Daniel called to tell me. Dad said not to tell you, he admitted. But that's not right. She's asking for you. I drove straight through from Portland to Greenwich, 34 hours with only gas station stops. I made it to the hospital 2 hours before she died. Dad was in the cafeteria when I arrived. By the time he got back to her room, I was holding Mom's hand as she took her last breath. He looked at me standing there and walked back out without a word. At the funeral, I sat in the back of the same church, watching Dad accept condolences like I didn't exist. When it was over, I drove back to Portland and tried to forget I ever had a father, but you can't forget the people who shaped you, even when they reject everything you are. Now I'm back in that same church, watching the same performance play out with a different body in the casket. The sanctuary is packed. Greenwich society turned out in force for Richard Morrison's farewell. I recognize faces from my childhood, the Caldwells who owned half the waterfront property, the Hutchinsons who ran the country club, the Bradshaws whose family money went back to the Revolutionary War. They're all here, dressed in expensive black, trading stories about Dad's brilliance and generosity. None of them ever came to my gallery shows. I watched Daniel play his role from my position in the back pew. He's standing near the front with Jennifer, his wife of 4 years. She's everything Dad would have wanted, Yale Law Review, partner at a white shoe firm in Manhattan, blonde hair that she wears in a perfect chignon. They look like a power couple from a magazine spread on successful millennials. Daniel's eulogy is flawless. He talks about Dad's journey from Newark to Wall Street, about the scholarship to Morehouse that changed everything, about building Morrison Associates from a one-room office in Lower Manhattan to a firm managing $800 million in assets. He mentions how Dad never forgot where he came from, how he mentored young Black professionals, how he donated to causes supporting economic mobility in underserved communities. He doesn't mention me once. Jennifer dabs at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, though I notice the tears never actually fall. She's good at this, at performing grief for an audience that values appearance over authenticity. The Reverend talks about Dad's devotion to family, his love for his children, his pride in their accomplishments. I feel my jaw tighten. What family? What devotion? He erased me like I never existed, but underneath the anger, there's something else I can't quite name. A hollow ache that feels like grief trying to find a way out through 8 years of scar tissue. The service ends. People file past the closed casket, touching it lightly, saying their final goodbyes. I stay seated, watching the theater of it all. Part of me wants to leave before anyone notices I'm here. The other part needs to see this through, though I don't know why. That's when I feel a hand on my shoulder. I turn to find Aunt Clara, Dad's younger sister, looking down at me with red-rimmed eyes. She's the only one who stayed in contact over the years, sending cards on my birthday, commenting on photos of my murals that I posted online. Lily, baby, she says, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so glad you came. I wasn't sure I should, I admit. She slides into the pew beside me, her black dress rustling. He talked about you more than you know. The words hit me like a physical blow. He had 8 years to talk to me directly. I know. Clara takes my hand. Richard was a stubborn, complicated man. He spent his whole life trying to prove he belonged in rooms that were never built for people like us. It twisted something in him. That doesn't excuse what he did. I know, she agrees. It doesn't. But maybe it helps explain it. Before I can respond, Daniel appears at the end of the pew. Up close, I can see the exhaustion around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He looks older than 35, like something's been eating at him from the inside. Lily, he says. We need to talk, now? At his funeral? The lawyer wants to see us tomorrow. 10 a.m. at his office on Madison Avenue. Daniel glances around, making sure no one's listening. Dad left specific instructions. You need to be there. Why would he leave me anything? He made it clear I wasn't part of this family anymore. Something flickers across Daniel's face. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. Just come. Please, Jennifer joins him, her expression carefully neutral. It's good to see you, Lily. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. The words are polite and completely hollow. Jennifer has never been good at hiding her disdain for the sister-in-law who chose art over ambition. The reception's at the house, Daniel continues. You should come. People are asking about you. People didn't care about me when Dad was alive. I'm not performing for them now. I stand up, needing space, needing air. I'll be at the lawyer's office tomorrow. That's all I can promise. I walk out of St. Mark's without looking back, leaving Daniel and Jennifer and Aunt Clara and all those Greenwich mourners behind. The October air is crisp, carrying the smell of salt from Long Island Sound. For a moment, I just stand there on the church steps, trying to remember how to breathe. My father is dead. After 8 years of silence, of carrying his rejection like a stone in my chest, he's gone. And somehow, impossibly, I'm crying. Not for the man in that casket, but for the father I thought I had before I understood the cost of his approval. Tomorrow I'll find out what game he's been playing all along. Tonight, I just need to survive this grief I have no right to feel. The law offices of Hartwell and Associates occupy the 42nd floor of a building on Madison Avenue that screams old money. Everything is dark wood and leather, the kind of place where deals worth millions get made over handshakes and single malt scotch. The receptionist escorts me down a hallway lined with portraits of founding partners, all white men with stern expressions, until we reach a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Midtown. Daniel's already there, sitting at the head of the long mahogany table like he owns the place. Jennifer sits beside him, her laptop open, probably already drafting press releases about Daniel's new role as CEO. Aunt Clara occupies a chair near the window, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. The fourth person in the room is someone I haven't seen in years, Mitchell Banks, Dad's CFO, and the man who'd been at his side since the early days of Morrison and Associates. Mitchell is in his mid-60s now, his hair completely gray, his dark suit immaculate. He was one of the few people from Dad's world who'd sent me a card when I left for Portland, wishing me luck and telling me to trust my instincts. He nods at me as I enter, but doesn't smile. Lily, Daniel says, not getting up. You're late, I'm 3 minutes early, I reply, checking my phone. You're just early. Jennifer's smile is thin. We're all anxious to get this handled. Daniel has meetings this afternoon with the board. The assumption in her words is clear. Daniel's inheriting the company, these are just formalities, and I'm an inconvenience they need to manage before getting on with their lives. I take a seat across from them, as far from Daniel as the table allows. The lawyer, a white man in his 70s named Howard Hartwell, enters carrying a leather portfolio. He's worked with Dad for 30 years, handling everything from business contracts to estate planning. Thank you all for coming, Hartwell says, settling into his chair. Richard left very specific instructions about how this meeting should proceed. I ask that you let me read through the will completely before asking questions. Daniel leans back in his chair, the picture of confidence. He's been groomed for this moment for 5 years, working directly under Dad, learning every aspect of the business. His expression says he's already mentally redecorating Dad's corner office. Jennifer has her phone ready, probably to text someone the moment it's official. I just feel tired. I don't want to be here, don't want anything from the man who cut me out of his life. I came only because Daniel called me 4 times yesterday, his voice increasingly desperate. You have to be there. Please, Lily. Just show up. Hartwell opens the portfolio and begins reading through the standard language about Dad being of sound mind and body when he executed the will. He covers small bequests first, donations to Morehouse College, to the Newark Boys and Girls Club, to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. Daniel's leg is bouncing under the table. Jennifer places a hand on his knee to still it, then Hartwell says, to my daughter Lily Morrison, I leave controlling interest in Morrison Associates, consisting of 51% of all company shares, along with full voting rights and authority over all business decisions. The room goes completely silent. I hear the words, but they don't make sense. It's like Hartwell is speaking a language I should understand but can't quite process. Daniel's the first to react. He's on his feet so fast his chair rolls backward and hits the wall. That's impossible. She hasn't spoken to him in years. She walked away from this family. There must be a mistake, Jennifer says, her voice sharp and controlled. She's already in lawyer mode, looking for the angle, the loophole. Richard wouldn't leave his company to someone with no business experience, no involvement in operations. There's no mistake, Hartwell interrupts, his tone firm. Richard was very clear about his intentions. He updated this will 6 months ago and reviewed it again 3 weeks before his death. I finally find my voice. I don't want it. Everyone turns to look at me. I don't want his company, I repeat, the words coming stronger now. I never wanted his money. That's why I left. Well, you've got it now, Daniel says, his face flushed with anger. Congratulations. Dad's final joke. Give everything to the daughter who abandoned him. I didn't abandon anyone, I shoot back. He's the one who, there's more, Hartwell interrupts again. He pulls out a sealed envelope, my name written across it in Dad's distinctive handwriting. Richard left a letter for Lily, to be opened and read aloud only in my presence and only with all parties present. Mitchell Banks speaks for the first time, his deep voice cutting through the tension. Read it. Jennifer whips around to face him. You knew about this, it's not a question. Mitchell's face confirms what she's already figured out. Mitchell, you've been Richard's right hand for 25 years, Daniel says, desperation creeping into his voice. Tell them this doesn't make sense. Tell them I've earned this. Read the letter, Mitchell repeats, looking at Hartwell. My hands are shaking as Hartwell slides the envelope across the table to me. The paper is heavy, expensive. I can feel everyone watching as I break the seal and unfold the single page inside. Dad's handwriting. Sharp, precise, the same handwriting that used to correct my homework, sign report cards, write notes in the margins of business books he'd give me for Christmas. Out loud, Hartwell reminds me gently that I clear my throat and begin reading. Lily, if you're reading this, then you trusted me enough to show up. That's more than I deserve after 8 years of silence, but it's also exactly why you're the only one who can do what needs to be done. My voice catches, but I force myself to continue. I'm not going to apologize for cutting you off, because that would suggest I had a choice. I didn't. What I'm about to tell you will hurt, and I'm sorry for that, but you need to understand why I did what I did. I glance up. Daniel's face has gone pale. Jennifer's fingers are white-knuckled on the edge of the table. 18 months ago, I discovered that Daniel has been embezzling money from Morrison Associates. The total theft, as of this writing, is $4.2 million. That's a lie, Daniel says, but his voice is weak. I keep reading that he did it through a network of shell companies, falsified investment reports, and manipulated client accounts. It's sophisticated work. If I hadn't been looking at a specific pattern of withdrawals for an unrelated audit, I never would have caught it. He was that good. Dad, stop, Daniel whispers, though Dad can't hear him anymore. I spent the last 18 months documenting everything. Mitchell Banks has been helping me, working with federal investigators to build an airtight case. By the time you read this, the FBI investigation will be days away from going public. Daniel will be arrested. Morrison Associates will be front-page news for all the wrong reasons. The paper trembles in my hands. The company is drowning in debt because of what Daniel took. But it's not just the money he stole. He's been making increasingly desperate investments, trying to cover his tracks, using client funds to chase returns that will never materialize. If someone doesn't step in immediately, the firm will collapse within 6 months. Everything I built will be gone. I look at Mitchell, who nods slowly. Confirmation. I cut you off 8 years ago to protect you from this. Not because you disappointed me. Never that. I cut you off because I saw what Daniel was becoming, and I couldn't let you get caught in the wreckage when it all fell apart. My throat tightens, but I force the words out. You were never the disappointment, Lily. You were the only one who understood that success isn't about proving something to white people who'll never fully accept us anyway. You left because you knew who you were. Daniel stayed because he needed my approval more than he needed his own identity. That hunger made him weak. It made him steal. Daniel has his head in his hands now, shoulders shaking. The truth is, I was proud of you every single day. Proud that you chose authenticity over my approval. Proud that you built something real with your art instead of chasing the hollow success I've spent my life performing. I couldn't tell you that without exposing Daniel's crimes or putting you in legal jeopardy as a company shareholder. So I stayed silent, and I watched from a distance, and I collected evidence. Tears are streaming down my face, but I keep reading. The company is yours now. Save it or sell it, that's your choice. But don't let Daniel's weakness destroy what I built from nothing. Don't let my silence for 8 years be for nothing. And know this, cutting you off was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the last act of love I could give you. I kept you away from the fire I saw coming. I have to stop, my voice breaking completely. Aunt Clara comes around the table and puts her hand on my shoulder. After a moment, I finish the letter. You're stronger than I ever was, Lily. You proved that when you left. Now prove it again. Build something better than I did. Build something true. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this while I was alive. I'm sorry for 8 years of silence. But I'm not sorry for protecting you. Love, Dad. The silence that follows is absolute. Then Mitchell speaks, his voice heavy with exhaustion. The FBI raid is scheduled for Monday morning. I've been cooperating with federal investigators for 14 months. Every transaction Daniel made is documented. Every shell company, every falsified report, every penny he stole. You knew, Daniel says, looking at Mitchell with betrayal in his eyes. This whole time, you knew, and you said nothing. Your father asked me to protect the company and protect Lily, Mitchell replies. That's what I've been doing. Jennifer is already on her phone, probably calling her firm, already calculating legal strategies. But her hands are shaking. Daniel turns to me, and for the first time since we were kids, I see him clearly, scared, desperate, caught. He gave you everything because you left, he says, his voice breaking. I stayed. I did everything he wanted. I sacrificed my whole identity to be the son he needed, and he gave you everything, and you stole $4 million, I say quietly, because I was drowning. Daniel shouts. Because nothing I did was ever enough. Because I spent my entire life trying to be perfect, and it still wasn't good enough. So you became a thief. I became what he made me. Daniel's crying now, fully breaking down. He pushed, and when I cracked, when I made one mistake, he didn't help me. He just watched me destroy myself so he could hand you his empire. The devastation in his voice is real. So is the crime he committed. The FBI will be here Monday, Hartwell says quietly. I suggest you both get legal counsel immediately. Jennifer is already pulling Daniel toward the door. Don't say another word. Not to anyone. They leave, Jennifer's heels clicking rapidly down the hallway, Daniel stumbling beside her like a man in shock. Aunt Clara squeezes my shoulder. You okay, baby? I'm not. I'm not anywhere close to okay. My father's cruelty wasn't cruelty at all. His silence was protection. 8 years of carrying his rejection, and it was love the entire time. He knew, I whisper. All those years, he was watching me succeed, and he couldn't even tell me he was proud that he's telling you now. Mitchell says gently that I look down at the letter in my hands, at Dad's handwriting, at the words that rewrite everything I thought I knew about who he was and who I was to him. Dad and why Father just made me responsible for saving or destroying his legacy, and on Monday, my brother's going to be arrested by the FBI. The calls start at 6 a.m. Saturday morning, less than 12 hours after the will. Reading. My phone vibrates on the nightstand of my hotel room in Stamford, Daniel's name flashing across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He calls again. And again. By noon, I have 17 missed calls and a string of text messages that grow increasingly frantic. We need to talk. This is insane. Dad was losing it at the end. The will isn't valid, Lily, please. I'm your brother, you don't understand what you're doing to this family. I'm sitting in the hotel restaurant, trying to eat breakfast I can't taste, when he finally gets through because I'm tired of the buzzing. What do you want, Daniel? To explain. His voice is ragged, like he hasn't slept. Can we meet? Just you and me, so you can convince me this is all a misunderstanding, so I can tell you the truth. He pauses. Please, Lily. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in downtown Greenwich, neutral territory where neither of us has history. He's already there when I arrive, sitting at a corner table, looking nothing like the polished investment banker from the funeral. His shirt is wrinkled. He hasn't shaved. His eyes are red-rimmed and hollow. Thank you for coming, he says as I sit down. You have 30 minutes. He laughs, bitter and sharp. 30 minutes to explain my entire life. Sure. He runs his hands through his hair. I deserved that money, Lily. I earned it by being the son he actually wanted. Do you know what it's like, living up to Richard Morrison's expectations every single day? Do you have any idea what he demanded? So you stole from him. I borrowed from the company I was going to inherit anyway. His voice rises, defensive. Every dollar I took, I planned to pay back once I was running things. It was temporary. A bridge loan. $0.4 million is not a bridge loan. It's theft. Daniel's face flushes. You don't understand the pressure. The constant performance. Jennifer's family has money going back generations. Real money. Old money. Do you know what it's like sitting at dinner with her father, listening to him talk about his grandfather's Standard Oil investments while I'm trying to prove I belong at the table? So Jennifer's lifestyle drove this. Jennifer expected a certain standard of living. He won't meet my eyes. And I had some bad investments. Tried to make quick returns to cover the gap. Got in over my head with some people who don't take excuses. The truth clicks into place. Gambling, his silence confirms it. How much do you owe? That's not relevant anymore. He leans forward, desperation making his voice tight. The point is, you got to run away. You got to be the authentic black artist, painting your feelings, teaching kids, living your truth in Portland. I had to be twice as good, play their game every single day, prove we belonged in Greenwich. Every business meeting, every client dinner, every country club event. Code switching until I forgot who I actually was. The pain in his voice is real, and part of me aches for the brother I used to know, before Dad's expectations crushed him into something unrecognizable. That doesn't justify what you did, I know. His voice breaks. But don't act like your choice was harder. You left. I stayed and slowly destroyed myself trying to be what he wanted. Before I can respond, my phone rings. Jennifer. Don't answer it, Daniel says quickly. Did I answer anyway, putting it on speaker. Lily, we need to talk about transitioning company control. Jennifer's voice is crisp, professional, like she's negotiating a merger. Daniel has been running operations for 5 years. The clients know him, trust him. If you step in now with no experience, you'll tank the company's value. But if you sign over operational control to Daniel, we can structure it so you maintain majority ownership while he handles day-to-day management. You mean let the thief keep stealing? Daniel made mistakes, but he's still the best person to run Morrison and Associates. You paint murals, Lily. You teach art classes. You have no business managing an investment firm. The FBI disagrees. They seem to think Daniel has no business managing anything except a defense strategy. Jennifer's pause is sharp. We can work with prosecutors. Daniel will cooperate fully, return what he took, accept probation. But only if you don't push for maximum penalties. Only if you let him save some dignity. This conversation is over, I say, and hang up. Daniel's staring at his coffee cup. She's just trying to protect me. She's trying to protect herself. She knew, didn't she? About the money. His silence is answer enough. My phone rings again. This time it's Aunt Clara. I step outside to take it, leaving Daniel alone with his cold coffee and his justifications. Lily, baby, I need to tell you something about your father. Clara's voice is thick with emotion. Something I should have told you years ago. What is it? He visited Portland. Twice a year, every year, since you left. He'd fly in, rent a car, and spend 3 days watching you from a distance. At your gallery shows, at the community center where you taught classes, at coffee shops where you'd sit and sketch. The world tilts. That's not possible. I would have seen him. He was careful. Stayed in the background. But he was there, Lily. He watched you build your life, watched you succeed on your own terms, and it killed him that he couldn't tell you how proud he was. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to know what you meant to him. And because there's something else. She takes a shaky breath. Your father owned 3 of your murals. Bought them through an anonymous buyer at different galleries over the years. They hung in his private study at the house. He'd sit there for hours, just looking at them. After we hang up, I stand on the sidewalk, cars passing, people walking by, and I can barely breathe through the weight of what I've lost. 8 years. 8 years of thinking he hated me, and he was in Portland watching me live my life. When I go back inside, Daniel's gone. Left cash on the table for coffee neither of us drank. The federal building in Lower Manhattan is all glass and security checkpoints. Mitchell Banks meets me in the lobby, looking exhausted but determined. You ready for this? He asks. No good. That means you're paying attention. Special Agents Carter and Rodriguez are waiting in a conference room on the 15th floor. They're younger than I expected, mid-30s, all business. The table between us is covered with documents, bank statements, wire transfer records, emails. Ms. Morrison, thank you for coming in, Agent Carter says. We know this is difficult. How long have you been building this case? 14 months, Agent Rodriguez replies. Your father approached us initially. Said he suspected embezzlement but needed time to document everything before his son realized what was happening. Mitchell adds, Richard wanted to give Daniel a chance to stop, to come clean. He waited 6 months, hoping Daniel would realize what he was doing and correct course, but he didn't. Agent Carter continues. Instead, he accelerated. The theft got more sophisticated, more aggressive. Your father realized Daniel wasn't going to stop. They walk me through the full scope. Daniel didn't just steal for Jennifer's lifestyle or his gambling debts. He was financing a whole fantasy existence, a yacht club membership he couldn't afford, investments in startups that his Greenwich friends were joining, a vacation home in the Hamptons he was planning to buy. And Jennifer? I ask. Agent Rodriguez slides a folder across the table. She knew everything. Helped him create the shell companies, used her legal expertise to structure the theft in ways that would be harder to trace. We have emails, text messages, recorded phone conversations. So she's not just an accessory. She's a co-conspirator. Correct. Agent Carter leans forward. Here's where it gets complicated. We have evidence that Daniel was planning to flee the country. He has tickets to the Cayman Islands, one way, leaving tonight. JFK, 8 p.m. flight. My stomach drops. He's running. We're not going to let that happen. But we need to know, Do you want to pursue maximum prosecution, or are you willing to consider a cooperation deal if he surrenders voluntarily and returns what he can? Mitchell speaks before I can. Your father built Morrison and Associates to prove a black man from Newark could compete on Wall Street. Could succeed in rooms that weren't built for people who looked like him. Daniel's weakness doesn't have to destroy that legacy. But if this goes to trial, if it becomes a media circus, the company's reputation will be shredded. What are you saying? That I should let him get away with it? I'm saying you have a choice. Justice or mercy. Both have costs. I look at the documents spread across the table, evidence of my brother's betrayal. Then I think about Dad, watching me from the back of gallery shows, too proud to approach, too guilty about his silence to break it. Prosecute fully, I say. He made his choices. Now he lives with the consequences. Agent Carter nods. We'll execute the arrest warrant at 6 p.m., before their flight. It'll be at JFK, during check-in. Quieter that way, but it's not quiet. Someone tips off the media. By the time I get back to my hotel, the news is everywhere. Wall Street executive's son arrested for $4.2 million embezzlement scheme. Daniel and Jennifer, in handcuffs, being led through the airport terminal while cameras flash and reporters shout questions. The narrative shifts overnight. Suddenly, I'm not the daughter who abandoned her father. I'm the sister who saved his legacy, who stepped up when her family needed her, who had the strength to hold her brother accountable. Greenwich society reverses course with stunning speed. The same people who whispered about me at the funeral are now calling me a hero. The ungrateful daughter becomes the responsible one. The black sheep becomes the savior. I watch it all from my hotel room, Daniel's mugshot on every news channel, and feel nothing close to victory. Just a hollowness that won't stop spreading, and grief that has nowhere to go. Aunt Clara gives me the keys to Dad's house on Round Hill Road 3 days after Daniel's arrest. Take your time, she says. Go through his things. Maybe you'll find some answers. The house looks smaller than I remember, or maybe I've just grown beyond the world it represents. I walk through rooms filled with expensive furniture and original art, past the dining room where Dad told me I was throwing away my future, up the stairs to his private study. The door is locked. It takes me 10 minutes to find the key in his bedroom nightstand, tucked inside a copy of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. Inside, the study is exactly as Aunt Clara described. 3 of my murals hang on the walls, lit by track lighting like they're in a gallery. They're pieces from my early Portland years, raw and angry, depicting black bodies navigating white spaces, the exhaustion of code switching, the cost of assimilation. Dad had bought the 3 angriest, most uncompromising pieces I'd ever created. His desk is organized with military precision. I open the drawers one by one, finding client files, financial reports, business cards. Then, in the bottom drawer, I find leather-bound journals. Years of them, stacked chronologically. I pull out the most recent one and open to a random page. September 15th. Flew to Portland yesterday. Sat in the back at Lily's gallery opening. Her new series is called Invisible Labor: Portraits of Black Service Workers in White Spaces. A janitor at a tech company. A nanny in Pacific Heights. A Lyft driver navigating microaggressions. The work is devastating and necessary. She's found her voice, the one I tried to silence. I'm so proud of her it physically hurts. My hands shake as I flip backward through the pages. June 3rd. Watched Lily teach her free workshop at the community center. 15 kids, mostly black and brown, learning to paint their truth. She told them art is resistance. I spent my life teaching Daniel that assimilation is survival. Which one of us was right? March 22nd. Found 3 more of Daniel's shell companies today. He's gotten sloppy, desperate. Mitchell says we have enough for FBI. But if I move now, I destroy him. If I wait, he destroys the company. There's no good choice. Only different kinds of loss. January 8th. Lily's New Year's post on social media: success is living aligned with your values, not your father's expectations. She was talking about art, but she was also talking about me. I taught Daniel to chase approval. Lily learned to chase authenticity. Guess which one is happier? I flipped to the final entry, dated 1 week before his death. I thought pushing her away would make her strong. Instead, I lost 8 years. 8 years of watching from a distance, too ashamed to bridge the gap I created, too proud to admit I was wrong. She succeeded on her own terms. She's everything I tried to be and failed. Everything Daniel could have been if I hadn't broken him with my expectations. She'll hate me when she finds out the truth. That I knew about Daniel for 18 months and said nothing. That I watched him destroy himself because I was too busy documenting his crimes to save him. Maybe I deserve her hate. But at least she'll have the company, the resources to build something better than I did. Something true. There are letters too, dozens of them, addressed to me but never sent. Apologies. Explanations. Love letters from a father who couldn't figure out how to express what he felt while he was alive. I'm still reading when Aunt Clara finds me hours later, surrounded by journals and letters, tears streaming down my face. He was proud of you every single day, she says softly, kneeling beside me. He just didn't know how to say it. Didn't know how to admit he'd been wrong about everything that mattered. She shows me a photo album I hadn't noticed. Pictures of me at gallery shows, at community events, teaching classes. Dad and everyone, always in the background, always watching, never approaching. The last photo is from 3 months before he died. I'm painting a mural on the side of a community center in Northeast Portland, surrounded by kids. Dad's standing across the street, almost hidden behind a parked car. Someone caught him wiping his eyes. That he loved you, Lily, Aunt Clara whispers. He just loved you in a language you couldn't understand. 6 weeks after the funeral, I'm back in Portland, sitting in my studio with Mitchell Banks on a video call. He's in Dad's old office, my office now, technically surrounded by boxes of files and legal documents. The forensic accountants finished their audit, he says. After recovering what we can from Daniel's accounts and liquidating some assets, Morrison Associates is worth approximately $18 million. That's your inheritance, Lily. The question is, what do you want to do with it? $18 million. The number doesn't feel real. It feels like monopoly money, like something that happens to other people in stories that don't include me. I could help you run it, Mitchell continues. I've been with the company 25 years. I know every client, every investment strategy. You could stay in Portland, be a silent majority owner, and I'd handle operations. Or you sell. There are 3 firms that have already expressed interest in acquisition. You'd walk away with somewhere between 12 and 15 million after taxes and fees. Clean break. No responsibility for your father's world. I stare at the half-finished mural on my studio wall, a piece about generational trauma and inherited pain. A month ago, the choice would have been obvious: take the money, stay in Portland, keep building the life I created without my father's approval, but nothing's obvious anymore. Daniel's sentencing happened last week. 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Jennifer got 5 to 7, reduced because she cooperated with prosecutors. Their Greenwich house is gone, seized by the government. Their assets frozen. Their reputations destroyed beyond any hope of recovery. A Greenwich society has reversed course with stunning speed. The same people who whispered about the ungrateful daughter now celebrate me as the responsible one, the sister who saved her father's legacy. I've received 17 invitations to charity galas, for requests for interviews, and a marriage proposal from a hedge fund manager I've never met. The hypocrisy makes my skin crawl. Where were these people during 8 years of silence? Where were the invitations when I was teaching free art classes and eating ramen for dinner because I couldn't afford both groceries and art supplies? Can I ask you something? I say to Mitchell. Of course, what would my father want me to do? Mitchell's quiet for a long moment. Richard would want you to do what's right for you, not what's expected. That's what he loved about you, Lily. You never asked permission to be yourself. After the call, I walked to the community center where I teach Tuesday night classes. 15 kids are waiting, ranging from 10 to 17, all black and brown, all learning to express themselves through art. This is what matters to me. This work, this community, this authenticity. My best friend Jasmine finds me after class, while I'm cleaning paintbrushes. She's a sculptor, lives 3 blocks away, knows everything about the past 6 weeks. You're thinking about keeping it, she says. Not a question, I don't know what I'm thinking. Yes, you do. You're thinking about how much good $18 million could do. How many kids you could help, how many artists you could support, how many communities you could invest in. She's right, but there's more to it than that. I'm also thinking about how angry I am, I admit. 8 years, Jasmine. He watched me from a distance for 8 years instead of just telling me the truth. And now he's dead, and I can't even yell at him for it. So you're going to what? Reject his money out of spite? I don't want his guilt money. Jasmine sets down the brush she's been cleaning. Lily, it's not guilt money. It's love money. Complicated, messed up, couldn't say it out loud love. But love nonetheless. That night, I read through Dad's journals again, looking for answers. One entry stops me cold. I built Morrison Associates to prove Black excellence to a white world that didn't want to see it. But maybe that was always the wrong audience. Maybe I should have been building something for us, not for them. That's when I know what I have to do. The press conference happens 8 weeks after Dad's death. Mitchell stands beside me at a podium in a rented event space in Harlem, cameras flashing, reporters taking notes. Today, I'm announcing the complete restructuring of Morrison Associates. I begin, my voice steadier than I feel. My father built this company to prove that a Black man from Newark could compete on Wall Street. I'm rebuilding it to serve the community he came from. I explain the new mission. An investment firm focused exclusively on Black-owned businesses, Black artists, Black entrepreneurs who've been told their dreams aren't marketable enough, aren't safe enough, aren't white enough. Mitchell will stay on as CEO, handling day-to-day operations. I'll serve as board chair, mostly remote from Portland, but involved in every major decision. We're moving headquarters from Madison Avenue to 125th Street in Harlem. We're hiring young Black professionals who understand the exhaustion of code switching, who know what it costs to perform respectability in spaces that were never built for them. My father spent his life proving we belonged in rooms that didn't want us, I say, looking directly at the cameras. I'm building rooms where we already belong. The questions come fast. How will this be profitable? Isn't this reverse discrimination? What makes me qualified to run an investment firm? I answer each one calmly, but inside I'm thinking, this is exactly the resistance Dad faced 40 years ago. The assumption that investing in Black excellence is charity, not strategy. That we're risks, not opportunities. 6 months later, Morrison Associates is profitable again. Turns out Black-owned businesses are excellent investments when you actually give them access to capital. Turns out Black artists create work that resonates with audiences hungry for authentic voices. Turns out the white investors who said this would never work were just protecting their own limited imagination. I sell the Greenwich house for $4.2 million, the exact amount Daniel stole. The symbolism isn't lost on anyone. I use the money to establish the Richard Morrison Arts Foundation, focused on funding Black artists who choose authenticity over marketability. Artists like I was at 24, being told they're throwing away opportunities by refusing to compromise their vision. The first grant recipients are announced in December. 25 artists, each receiving $50,000, no strings attached. Just space to create, to breathe, to exist without performing for white approval. One of them sends me a message, "You just saved my life." I was about to give up and get a corporate job. Now I can keep making the work that matters. That message is worth more than the entire $18 million. The media loves the story. Daughter transforms father's legacy after brother's betrayal. I do exactly 3 interviews, then stop responding to requests. This isn't about me becoming famous. It's about making sure other artists don't have to choose between authenticity and survival the way I did, Daniel writes from prison. The letter arrives on a Tuesday, forwarded from the Harlem office. I recognize his handwriting on the envelope. Inside, 3 pages of rambling self-justification. How Dad pushed him too hard. How Jennifer's family expected too much. How the gambling was a disease, not a choice. How he deserves a second chance, how family should forgive family, how I'm being cruel by not visiting him. Not once does he actually apologize. Not once does he take responsibility without immediately explaining it away. I read it once, then put it in my desk drawer. Some betrayals don't require a response. Jennifer's letter comes a week later, written on expensive stationery despite being mailed from a federal facility. It's calculated, carefully worded, already angling for early release. She's sorry for the pain she caused. She was under Daniel's influence. She made mistakes, but she's learned and grown. She hopes I can find it in my heart to write a letter supporting her parole hearing in 3 years. The audacity is almost impressive. I don't respond to that one either. Silence, I've learned, is its own kind of answer. Instead, I focus on the work. Mitchell and I meet weekly via video call, reviewing investment opportunities, discussing expansion plans. We're opening a second office in Atlanta, a third in Oakland. We're creating a network of support for Black entrepreneurs who've been systematically excluded from traditional funding sources. At night, I paint. The new series is called Inheritance, exploring what we receive from our parents beyond money. Trauma and resilience. Expectations and rebellion. Love that doesn't know how to speak its own language. The work is the most honest I've ever created. It hurts to make, which means it's true. Aunt Clara visits Portland for the first time, spending a week in my guest room, meeting my friends, seeing my murals throughout the city. On her last night, we sit on my tiny balcony drinking wine and watching the sunset. Your father would be proud, she says, would he? I dismantled everything he built. No, baby. You transformed it. You took his dream and made it better, truer. That's what he always wanted. He just didn't know how to get there himself. Maybe that's the real inheritance. Not the money or the company, but the permission to build something better than what we were given. To honor the past without being trapped by it. To love complicated people while still holding them accountable for the harm they caused. I'm still angry at my father. Still grieving the 8 years we lost. Still processing the weight of everything he couldn't say while he was alive, but I'm also building something beautiful from the wreckage. And maybe that's enough. 1 year after Dad's funeral, I'm in my Portland studio finishing the final piece of my Inheritance series. The mural shows 2 figures, a father and daughter, separated by a wall of silence, both reaching toward each other but never quite touching. It's the most honest work I've ever created, raw and painful and necessary. The gallery show opens in New York next month. Mitchell's already confirmed he'll be there, bringing executives from the new Morrison and Associates. They want to see the art that started all of this, the rebellion that my father secretly celebrated while publicly condemning it. I'm adding final details when Aunt Clara appears at my studio door, carrying a wooden box I've never seen before. Your father's last belongings, she says, setting it on my work table. I've been holding on to these, waiting for the right time. Inside are my childhood sketches. Hundreds of them, carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. Drawings from elementary school, paintings from middle school, every piece of art I ever created. He'd saved everything, even after the silence began, even when he pretended I didn't exist. At the bottom of the box is a sealed envelope. My name in his handwriting, with instructions, open on your 33rd birthday. That's 6 months away. I whispered that he was planning something, and Clara says softly. Planning to reach out, to explain everything before then. Mitchell calls that evening with his own revelation. Your father was planning to retire. He drafted his resignation letter, scheduled a trip to Portland. He was going to confess everything, Lily. Tell you about Daniel, about the FBI investigation, about watching you from a distance all those years. He was finally ready to apologize. The heart attack came first. He ran out of time, never got to say he was sorry, never got to bridge the gap he'd created, but maybe the apology was always there, hidden in plain sight. In the company he left me. In the journals documenting his pride. In the murals hanging in his study. In 8 years of silence that was actually protection. I'm not the disappointment. I never was. The real tragedy isn't what happened to me. It's what happened to Daniel. A company investigation revealed something Mitchell and I suspected but couldn't prove. Daniel's theft started 2 years after Dad began pushing him harder, demanding more, raising expectations until they became impossible to meet. Dad escaped Newark poverty by becoming someone else entirely. Then he tried to force Daniel into that same performance, that same exhausting code switching, until my brother broke under the weight of it. The cycle of trauma. Father builds prison to escape poverty, then locks his children inside different cells of the same structure. My promise is to break that cycle. Let success be self-defined. Let authenticity matter more than approval. Let the next generation inherit freedom instead of expectations. If you've ever felt like the family disappointment, if you've ever chosen authenticity over approval, if you've ever wondered whether following your own path was worth the cost of other people's acceptance, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And sometimes the people who reject us are actually protecting us from battles we can't see yet. Sometimes silence is love that doesn't know its own language. Drop a comment about a time you chose yourself over expectations. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the best inheritance isn't money. It's permission to be exactly who you are. I'm back in my community center classroom the next Tuesday, teaching 15 kids to trust their voices, to paint their truth, to resist the pressure to make their art more palatable for audiences that don't understand them. My phone rings during class. Mitchell. The Morrison Foundation just funded 50 new Black artists this quarter, he says. 50 people who were told they were throwing away their futures by choosing art over something more practical. I smile, bitter and sweet, grief and pride mixing into something that feels almost like peace. Dad got his legacy after all, I say, watching my students paint with fearless honesty. Just not the one he expected. And somehow, that's exactly what he would have wanted.